Hey guys, it's Anna. Thanks so much for visiting my channel. So I'm doing a little experiment tonight and I thought I would bring you along for some of it. So you might recall that I recently purchased this Canson XL Fluid Media notepad from our local art supply store. It was $7.49 and it has 30 sheets of 7 by 10 inch paper and it's 154 pound. And I thought it might be interesting to try this for stamping and light watercolor work, since it is designed for fluid mixed media. So I thought I would kind of test out some products on it tonight, and then this got me thinking about how some of the other papers that I use might react to all these types of products as well. So I've been doing a little bit of experimenting. So let me go ahead and show you what I've done here. You can see one of them is still wet here, but let me go ahead and tell you what I've used. So I wanted to try all the different kinds of ink that I use on here. So this is an Impression Obsession hybrid ink, this one here, and it's stamped really nicely and dried really nicely. And then this is a distress ink, and it is in the color Vintage Photo. This one is Memento, Black Memento, so this one. And then the next one is Black Stays On, so that one. And then this one here at the end is VersaFine. So those are all the inks that I'm using in all of my tests. Once I thought they were dry, I just ran my finger over them to see if any of them would smear or, rub off. And they all dried perfectly nice. Then what I did is I decided to grab some of my fountain pens and the various inks that I have inked currently. So this is a Pilot Kakuno, and it's inked in a Noodler's Aircorp ink, and it's a medium nib. Then this one is the TWSBI Echo, and this has an extra fine nib on it, and it's using the Diamine Aurora Borealis ink. And then the next one is the TWSBI Eco Extra Fine with the Platinum Carbon Black. This is the waterproof ink that I use when I do my watercolors and inks in my journal. Then I used a Coeco Pearl with a fine nib and in the color Summer Purple, in the Coeco ink Summer Purple. And then I used my Lamy Safari, which has a broad nib, and it's also inked up with the Platinum Carbon Black, which is the same one there. I was seeing if I could feel the ink. It puts down so much ink. Sometimes you can actually feel where the ink has raised the paper once it's dried. But I can't actually feel it all that much, just a little bit. Then I used the Micron Sepia 01 pen, which is this one. Then I used the Fuden no Suki, which is a Tombow marker, and it has a stiff brush nib. And then I used a gel pen, just a regular Pilot G2 gel pen. I also used a Tombow marker, and that's one of these, Tombow brush marker. So that's this olive green color here. I did try a Copic, I tried a Prismacolor, and I tried a Zig Clean Color Real Brush. That's the pink right there. And then I tried 3 different colors from my Paul Rubens Mi Lang watercolor set, and that is this set here that I shared recently as well. So it has the 3 rows of standard watercolor paints, and then it has 1 row of shimmer. So I used that. And then also in this book, I used a big blob of Diamine Aurora Borealis because I wanted to see how this would handle maybe ink swatch cards, and I think it turned out beautiful. You can actually see the red sheen that ink has as well. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a red sheen along the edge there where the ink was heavy. And then this is Stampin' Up! Reinker, so I just dropped a couple drops of ink on there, and then I smushed it around with this, actually, it's a blank wax seal press. So I smushed it around with that, and then I added a little bit of water here to the edge. And then this is Sukaneko's Walnut Ink Antiquing Solution, and it looks like this. And this is ancient. I don't even know if they make this anymore. I've had this for almost 20 years probably. But look how beautiful that bled out once I added water to it. So really lovely. And then here, this little snail I stamped in Stays On, and I just lightly watercolored it with various colors of the Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers. And I think it turned out really nice. It looks really cute. A little watercolored guy right there. So the whole point of this was to see not only how the paper performed with all of these different products, but to see if anything bled through the backside. And really the only thing that even looks like it's somewhat bleeding through is where I pushed the Stampin' Up! Reinker. You can see it right here. There's just a couple little speckles of ink that are starting to come through the paper. But, you know, I put, you know, a few drops on there and then actually pressed the ink into the paper. So, but I did the same thing with this, and I did the same thing with this, and they were not pushing through. But yeah, anyway, so I wanted to share that. And then I mentioned that this got me started on all kinds of tests. So I pulled out a bunch of different papers that I have and use, and thought I would test them as well. So let me share with you the results. And then I have one more, actually two more pieces of paper or books that I want to do the same test in, so that I have consistent ink tests on all these different papers. So this is an old Moleskin book. It was so old, actually, when I went to undo the elastic cording here, it had absolutely no stretch left, and pulled out one side, so I just pulled the other one out as well. So I've had this for ages and ages. So I did the same test on this paper, and so I used all the same inks, the same Zig brush marker, the same Prismacolor, the same fountain pens with ink, and the same gel pen and micron pen. And then I used the same Tombow, the same Copic. I used the same watercolors, and so that's what they look like on this. One thing I've noticed about the carbon black ink is it really starts to feather with this paper. I noticed it on this line here with the TWSBI Eco, and I noticed it a lot more heavily on the Lamy Safari line. So I don't know if you can see that, but it has little lines of ink going into the fibers of the paper. And other than that, it handled everything okay. It didn't handle the watercolors very well. The Copic is not very bright, but this is not marker paper. I just wanted to see if it would bleed through. And I don't really like how this looks on here either, the Zig brush markers. So it seemed to kind of pill the paper really quickly. And then let's take a look at the back, so you can see how most everything started either coming through, bleeding through, or you definitely can see the ghosting here, where the ink, you can see it on the other side, but it hasn't quite started to bleed through yet. So, and really the only stamp ink that worked, I would say, would be the Distress ink. But it's a much lighter color as well. But all of these others, I wouldn't be comfortable using this side of the paper with this much ghosting or bleed through. So, and then the pens down here, you can see the Tombow was fine, the gel pen was fine, and the Micron Sepia, and even the Kaweco, it's right here. It has a little bit of ghosting, but it's not bad. But all these other ones, like especially the Lamy Safari, is really starting to bleed through. So that's the Moleskin. Then I also did the same thing in a field notes folder. So there you can see all the same inks, same Tombow, same Zig, same Copic, same watercolors. Everything's the same. And there's the results of the ghosting or bleed through. So it handled everything okay. Some of the fountain pens were a little heavy on the bleed through here, especially the Lamy Safari, the two TWSBIs, they bled through. But everything else seemed to handle okay. And what I was surprised to see was that the stamping inks all seemed to do okay. The Impression Obsession one is coming through just a little. It's the heaviest ghost image, but you know, I think it's still usable for sure. The watercolors, they're okay. Just okay. I mean, they'd be fine. I think if you had a little doodle and you wanted to add just a splash of color to it, I think it would be fine. But I don't think they were going to blend and bleed and do the fun watercolor effects that we're used to. The other thing I noticed is that this TWSBI Diamine, you can't see the fun characteristics that ink has. It has a really beautiful shading characteristics, and you just can't see it on this paper. So it just looks all one color. So that's the field notes. And then I also tried it on a traveler's notebook. This is a passport-sized free diary. So this is traveler's notebook paper. And they're known to have really good quality papers. You can see here I closed the book too soon, and the inks that were taking a little longer to dry speckled the back side of that paper, so that would be one thing to be aware of. And then those inks did smear with my finger for a longer time too, so it just takes a little bit longer to dry on this paper. So you can see I used all the same inks, same pens, even used the Copic. Watercolor down here actually looks pretty nice. And again, I think it'd be fine if you were just splashing some color on to like a little doodle or like a little page header area. I don't think you'd want to go crazy with any watercoloring, but this shimmer watercolor looks great on here. Really, really nice. And then the back side, you can see that all but the Distress ink is heavily ghosting. And all the fountain pens, they did really well. Even the Lamy Safari, I'd be comfortable using this side of the paper with that Lamy Safari ink on the back side, and it's right here. Of course, Copic bled right through, but the watercolor didn't. And yeah, there's some wrinkles, but you know what? That happens when you use a notebook. And I would be perfectly comfortable using any of these on this paper, except for maybe the stamping, several of the stamping inks. So, and still, if you were just using one side of your papers and then, you know, flipping the page, leaving this side blank and then just moving on to this side, I think they'd be fine in here. But I also wasn't too big of a fan of the Zig brush marker on this paper, but it could be just because it got a rough start. So that's a product I would give another shot on this paper. So anyway, that is the Traveler's Notebook paper. Then I have this, oh, I don't know how to say this word. Leuchtturm 1917. I don't know how to say that, but it's a dot journal. I also picked this up at the art supply store some time ago. So I thought I would give this paper a shot. This paper is really super thin. And so there's all the products that I used. Same inks, everything. So here you can see how nice the shading is on that Diamine ink. It has lights and darks in it, and it's really beautiful. And that's something you weren't seeing on the field notes paper. But everything looks nice. The watercolors look great on here. And again, I would still just use these to splash some color on a doodle or do a quick header. The Zig brush marker looks good on here. And then on the back side, you can see this stuff came through pretty good. So the Distress ink is the one ink that looks the best here. All of the Pilot, or all the fountain pens ghost, but they don't bleed through. The Copic comes through, but the watercolors do okay. I mean, you know they're there, but it's not bad. I would still feel comfortable using this side of the page. And that Zig marker didn't come through at all either. So I would be comfortable using all of these products on this paper, except for maybe these heavier stamping inks. So that's that. Then let's see. Then I have this notebook. This is just a Traveler's Journal insert. It's just an inexpensive brand. It's not an actual Traveler's company brand. It's just one I picked up on Amazon. It came with 3. There was this lined one, there was a grid notebook, and then there was a plain blank. But they're all this standard, I think this is, what is this, A5 or something like that? A5 size. So I did all the same tests, same inks for the Snail, same fountain pens, and all the same products down here. The watercolors look great, 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 great on here. And there's like no buckle to the paper at all. And then the back side, it looks amazing. So the only thing that really started to come through was the Impression Obsession ink, and it's a really juicy ink pad. So I'm thinking maybe if it wasn't quite such a juicy ink pad, we would have no trouble at all. These are ghosting, but not coming through at all. None of the fountain pens came through. The Copic came through slightly, but the watercolors didn't even come through. So I'm really impressed with this paper. Even the Aurora Borealis, you can see the shading. So it goes from lights to darks, and you can see that in the ink there. So I was quite pleased with this. Very surprised, actually. What I was really surprised about were how the little watercolor swatches performed. I mean, look at that blue. There's not even a buckle in the paper. So really, really impressed with that. Then I tried this Clairefontaine paper. This is just a small notebook that I have. It's just lined, nothing fancy. But Clairefontaine paper is gets really good reviews for journalers and fountain pen users. So let's take a look and see how it performed. So same inks. On this paper, it's funny, you can actually feel, I can feel the raised fibers, so I can tell that there's ink right there, and I can tell there's ink right here. It's interesting. So everything on the front here is the same. I use the same watercolors again. These have a little bit of buckle, and they're not quite as great as they were on that other paper, but on that generic paper, but I still think they look nice. I think they'd be great to add to a doodle. There's the Copic and the Zig brush. The Zig brush I wasn't too hip on, but I think it could be worked with. Again, the inks took a little longer to dry, and I closed the book and it speckled over here, so you might want to use a blotting paper if you use this paper. Let's take a look at the back side. So again, really impressed with the quality of this paper. I would be comfortable using all of these inks on this paper and not having it bleed through. None of the fountain pens bled through. Here's where the watercolor swatches are, so you can see the little puckers in the paper there, but I would be completely fine using this side of the paper. And then there's the Copic swatch there that came through. So really, really great results with this Clairefontaine paper. And let's see, I also have this book. This is a Cafe Note, and it's a Nanami paper made in Japan. I don't know. So I have this one yet to do, and then I have this book as well. So this is one that I bought when I was traveling for work years ago, like I would say 23 years ago I bought these. And I bought them in Taipei, Taiwan, I think. Pretty sure. So I have 3 of them. I haven't actually used them. I've opened the red one, but I haven't opened the yellow one or the green one, but they're all the same. And so I thought I would give this paper a try as well. And these are kind of interesting books. They're lined in the first half, and then they're blank in the second half of the book, and they have a crazy psychedelic paper in the middle there. So it's just blank paper on this side. Really nice books, but I'm not sure how it's gonna handle all of these inks and things. So let's give it a try. I'm just going to go to the back of the book here. And I think I'll go to the second page in. And then on this one, this actually is the book I've been using to track my ink swatches and my ink pens. So these are just the ink pens I have and what ink I have in them. And then further back, what I'm doing is I'm just tracking my inks and doing a sample of my inks. And I recently purchased a baggie of ink samples. And so these are the bottles of ink that I have, but everything else in here is just those little tube samples. So I thought this would be a good way to figure out maybe which inks I want to purchase full bottles of. So you can see how beautiful these are. And the nice thing about this paper, though, even though it's super thin, it really shows the beautiful shading of the inks. So they go from light to dark as you write, how the ink changes and pools out of the fountain pen nib. This one I thought was a huge fail. It was really thick and heavy, and you can almost see that it kind of looks like paint right there. This was just a really heavy ink. And a completely like neon blue color. This one I think is beautiful here. You can see how all the colors pull out of that ink. And then this one is interesting as well. It has a really heavy red sheen to it, so in the light it kind of changes colors there. So then there's those. I think this one's really beautiful. This one has a little bit of shimmer to it. And then there's some more purples. I'm really trying to find a purple ink that I like. I love this one, actually. I think that's really beautiful. And I really love this one, too. This is Moonstone. And then I'll probably get this one, the Walnut from Noodlers, because it is a waterproof ink once it's dry. So this would be fun to use for my sketches and watercolors in my journal, because I could draw with this and paint over it and it wouldn't bleed. And then I'm also interested in finding a really beautiful green, so I bought a sample of this one, and I love this color. You can see how the beautiful shading is in there. And then this is gorgeous too. This was I ordered a little baggie of like a surprise me ink baggie, so they just picked out 8 colors and sent them to me. And this one I think is so beautiful. It's shimmered, but look at the beautiful yellows. So pretty. And then I love this. Holy cow. What's called Walk the Dog. I really like that ink. And then I think I have one more. Nope, here's my blacks. So it was interesting to swatch out my blacks. So this is the one that I normally use for my sketching. It's called Platinum Carbon Ink. And they sent me, when I ordered my samples, I ordered them from Goulet Pens. They sent me this one as one of my surprise ink samples, and it has a really green undertone, and it's also not waterproof once it's dry. And then this one is the Diatramentis Archive ink, and I thought this was really beautiful, and it's actually much darker in color than the Platinum Carbon ink, and it was waterproof. When I added water over it, nothing actually moved at all. So I think if I ever finish this Platinum Carbon ink, this would be one that I would be interested in getting, because I think it's really interesting, you know, how this one is just black. This one has actually lots of interest to it. Anyways, moving on. The last one here is this Coeco Summer Purple cartridge set. I just bought a little packet of cartridges for my pen. So that's that, but I also wanted to do the same ink test in the back here that I've been doing in everything else. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to set this one aside and do that one separately. But I think I'll do this one with you here if you'd like. So I'm just going to stamp my little snail. Let's see. All right, so for my little snail, I've got this old Stampin' Up! Snail. I thought he was cute, and he was sitting right here on my desk. I was going to use a chicken, but the chicken stamp that I have is on my desk here is solid. and I didn't want to go find another one. All right, so there's the Impression Obsession ink. I have a paper towel here. Just dab that off. Next up was the Vintage Photo. Then Memento. And then Stays On. And then finally, VersaFine. All right, so let me grab a pen and label these before I forget. All right, I can zoom you down in here if you like. Alrighty, so let's take a look here. I'm just going to start here with this pen. Moving on. This is the TWSBI Echo, or Eco, with that beautiful Aurora Borealis ink in it. Really love that color. And then this is also a TWSBI Echo. And the EF is a reference to the nib size. So this is an extra fine TWSBI nib. This one up here was a medium nib. And this is Platinum Carbon Black. Let's see. Next, I'll do this little one. This is the Coeco Pearl. This has a fine nib. Summer Purple Coeco ink. Next up is the Lamy Safari, and this is a broad nib. Carbon black. All right, so those are the 5 fountain pens. Now let's move on to this one here. This is the Tombow Fudenosuke? I don't know. It's the brush pen. Then we'll do the Pilot, or the Micron. Then we'll do the gel pen. Exciting, huh? And now I think we'll do this Tombow. I'll do the Copic over here, and I'll label that as well. And then I will do the Zig brush pen up here. And then I will do the Paul Rubens. Down there. You're zoomed in so far, you probably couldn't see that. All right. So let's grab the little Zig brush. And I've been using the same paintbrush with the watercolors. And using the same colors as well. So with the blue, I've done a thinner consistency. For the yellow ochre, I've done a heavier paint consistency. And then for the sparkles, I've just done basically tried to get it be the same consistency on all the papers. All right, so let's take a look now. So I don't see any feathering or anything like that with the inks. This Pilot Kakuno ink up here with the noodlers, it's still wet. So if I was to close this, it would speckle on the other side. Or if I run my finger across it, it would smear. I don't see that anything else is still wet. Even the Lamy Safari is dry. And the watercolors, that looks nice. Again, I think I would still be comfortable using these for quick little colors on some doodles. Let's take a look at the back. Ooh, so some of the inks came through. The Distress ink did not, but again, it's a fairly light color. The Zig brush pen up there by the snails, it's ghosting through, but it didn't come through. None of the fountain pens came through. I mean, you can see that they're there, but I would be completely comfortable using this side of the paper. The Copic marker came completely through. And the watercolors here did not come through, but they are leaving a little bit of a buckle, which actually may flatten out once they completely dry. So there is that. How interesting that these really fine papers, I mean, this is almost like tissue paper thin. It's super thin. It's really amazing that it can handle this type of media. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and do this other notebook. If you'd like to stick around, I'll record it and you can watch that process too. But I hope you found this interesting. I know I certainly did. And it all started because I wanted to know how this paper handled various different types of medium. So isn't that beautiful? So I don't know how I'm going to use this paper yet, and actually this is still wet. Isn't that crazy? This has been wet for like almost 2 hours. And it's really wet. But I'm just going to leave it over here and let it completely dry and do its thing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that other notebook, and you're welcome to hang out with me. But thanks so much for watching, and I hope you found this interesting. Talk to you later. Okay, so there's the inks for the snail. There's a little bit of feathering with the Impression Obsession ink, and I think that's it. But again, that's a really juicy ink pad right now. Here's the Zig brush. Here's all my fountain pens. The carbon black, again, is a heavy feathering ink on this paper. Everything else seemed to do okay. Not too hip on the watercolor here. The shimmer one looks better than the regular watercolors, but I'm gonna wait and see what those look like when they dry. And then let's take a look at the back, shall we? Oh, so there's the inks. They all came through except for the Distress ink. The Zig marker is ghosting. You can see it there. Most of the fountain pens came through. In fact, everything ghosted except for the Micron. It's really, really faint. The Coeco ink is a little bit lighter as well, but you can see everything. It'd be difficult to write over this, I think. The Copic came through, and there you can see the watercolors really heavily buckled the paper, and that shimmer one, even though it looks better on the front side, is coming through on the back side. And this one is coming through as well. So interesting. So it'll be interesting to see that dry and how it turns out, but probably not one I would use for anything that I want to use both sides of the paper for. So anyways, hope this has been fun for you. I know it's been interesting for me, so thanks for watching. Bye!